everybody. Trace here for Seeker at the DNC in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. If you were tuning in last week, we were at the RNC with Jules, and I've swapped in this week. And we took the weekend to kind of catch up with what was going on, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So with me here, we've got Laci Green, we've got Alicé, sorry. And then I don't know how to pronounce your name. Nadeska. From Complex, from BitTorrent News, and Laci from Sex Plus / Brawlus / everywhere on YouTube. So today's theme is party unity at the DNC. Maybe if you've been following the news, Bernie had a rally this afternoon where he said we have to elect Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine, and then he got booed for saying that. So it doesn't really feel like party unity. But how do you guys think? Have you got kind of a read on the DNC so far?
I think Bernie's just in a really tough spot right now, right? I think it's been clear this whole time that Bernie supporters are definitely not Hillary supporters. I know our viewers specifically, I remember the day we posted that Bernie officially endorsed Hillary, they were pissed. They were angry at us. Yeah. I'm like, guys, I'm just announcing the news. I didn't have anything to do with this.
Yeah.
You know, so I think for him to stick his neck out and endorse her, and then for us to find out that the DNC has been favoring Clinton, I just think it's like sticky, and I'm not sure what he does right now.
I feel like it's just such bad timing for everything, considering the recent leaks. And now many Bernie supporters have been vindicated because Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the chair of the DNC, has agreed to step down. But at the same time, I was out at the protest yesterday in Philly. There was a big rally for Bernie about climate change. And I spoke with a lot of people that were Bernie or bust. And I also spoke with people that saw this as part of a bigger movement, that it was a revolution, that electing somebody like Donald Trump is just regressive and it does not advance some of the progressive agenda that Bernie and many of the people there believe in. But there's still, I feel like this is just really emblematic of this fracture within the Democratic Party. And a lot of people are still deeply hurt by the emails, by the way that Bernie has been treated since the beginning of this campaign. So for this moment to be called a moment of unity, I find that very difficult, at least for Bernie supporters. How they will vote in November, it's still, many months to come.
A long way to
we
go
don't know what
that
will happen, but at least at this moment, what I experienced with many of them was not unity at all. That's not what they're calling for.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that unity should be the goal of all the leaders that are speaking at the convention. I really do think that people are right to be upset. It's kind of messed up what's going on. And, I think that the outrage is warranted and people need to have an outlet for it. And while we're here at the convention, my hope is that our leaders use this as an opportunity to really reflect and be honest and genuine and authentic with people to actually unify. And if they aren't, then I think the divide will continue, and that could really hurt Democrats during the election.
Yeah, I like that you said authentic and honest. Like, that's, coming from where we work on YouTube, like, that's our stuff.
State.
Like, we want to make sure to be as honest and authentic as possible. So if the politicians that we want to see on those stages also do that, then people will support them, I think, more easily, right?
Yeah.
We brought up the leaked emails. So in case you're unaware, 19,000 and some leaked emails came out over the weekend, and they talked about all sorts of things, from using maybe Bernie's religion against him to talking about I saw one headline that I think summed it up nicely. It was that the DNC had its finger on the scale, was, tipping the scales toward who they were interested in. So I guess how does that impact the DNC? Like those emails being leaked, as you said, with timing right now. Like, what do you think, Laci?
I feel like, I was watching the CNN report. I don't have all the details, but there is some suspicion that it was possibly tied to the GOP, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like, that's a strategic timing, and if you want to win this election, it's understandable from a strategic standpoint why the opposition might do that. But you know what? Honestly, the Democratic Party needed to confront this sooner or later. So might as well be while we're all together in Philly. We can just do it face to face.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also alleging that Russia had something to do with it, which I know you guys wanted to talk about.
Yeah, the Russia connection is a little bit wild. I don't know if you guys have been following that, but it's been very clear through Russia's state media, through statements that have been made in the past, that Vladimir Putin is intent on electing Donald Trump.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons, due to the fact that Donald Trump has expressed positive sentiment towards Putin. I don't know if you guys know this, but he loves dictators. He loves Kim Jong-un, says he's a strong leader. Putin is a strong leader, and as long as you're a strong leader in Donald Trump's eyes, then, that means that you're... Exactly. He's an authoritarian. That's been proven.
The best leaders.
Yeah. And Putin, because Hillary Clinton in many ways is seen as kind of an experienced stateswoman, right? She's a little bit more calculated. She's a little bit more careful. She has not been open to Russia, though when she was Secretary of State, there was a bit of an opening for a few years. And ever since then, Putin, she's part of the Obama administration. Obama has not been great for U.S.-Russia relations. So the question is, what role is Russia playing? Because a lot of the files, the WikiLeaks, the hackers have been said that it's been linked to Russian hackers from the government. Whether that has been proven, it's still not sure. Russia, of course, has unequivocally denied it.
Of course.
Is it true? They're always going to deny things. The CIA still says till this day that it is not involved in coups anywhere in the world, in spite of the fact that we've proven otherwise. So that's what the states are going to do.
Yeah.
But how that plays out in the rest of the election, I find it's going to be really interesting.
Right, yeah.
I feel like the GOP just keeps winning right now. Because if a similar leak had happened before their convention, I'm sure all hell would have broken loose. But like you guys said, conveniently it happens. And tonight Bernie speaks, and honestly, I feel bad for him. I just feel like it puts him in such a tough situation. Because now he has to come forward and say, look, guys, despite this happening, it's still really important that you all rally behind Clinton. So I think that's what he's going to do, and props to him. I just also feel bad that it's, he's been doing the right thing this whole time, and it feels like he's getting punished twice.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is that he's kind of showing his colors as he was in Congress for a long time. He knows how the system works, and he knows that now is the time to kind of move toward togetherness.
Right.
The primaries are over. The general is starting. What happened in the primaries is now essentially does not matter, right? It's time to move forward into the actual election process, because we haven't even really started that part yet, which is crazy. But I also wanted to talk about a little bit about how the superdelegates rules changed over the weekend. So a superdelegate, for people who may not be aware, are people who either held office or are currently in office, who are delegates, who are free to choose whomever they like. They're not tied to their state, right? So people like Bill Clinton, Bernie Sanders is a superdelegate, Nancy Pelosi, Cory Booker, people who are holding office, but also people who are formerly in office. So. But the new rules, by the way, say within 60 days of the general, so by January, they have to have a plan to, one, bind to their state primary winner any delegates, and many of the superdelegates, except the ones that are currently in office, so senators and House of Representatives members, and also look at eligible voting being same-day registration, and make sure that more eligible voters can participate. So, all of that sounds great, and that's stuff in a lot of cases that Bernie supporters have been asking for.
That is success.
Right
there.
Yeah. So, I feel like, is that getting swept under the rug because of this other stuff? Like, how does that play out, you think?
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it is getting swept under the rug, but it's more pressing to pay attention to problems that are happening right now than our victories. But I do think people should celebrate and as activists and people who want to see change, I sometimes feel like, as an activist myself, I feel like we don't take time to really relish our victories. But there's so much more that's going on. It's time sensitive, it's urgent. So I understand why, that's not maybe getting as much fodder right now. But people should celebrate, and maybe, once this is all over, we can take a breather and, raise our glass to the accomplishments of this cycle.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are celebrating. At the same time, again, because of the timing and because of the nature of the emails that were leaked, many people are feeling like this election was robbed from them. It was literally stolen. And what I find most concerning is that maybe even if the playing field had been equal, even if the rules were just, Hillary Clinton would have still won, right? That's a very real possibility. But the problem with it, and that is what is problematic for democracy, is that we will never know. We will never know if that was actually the case. We'll never know if the process was actually open and democratic, if the 2.3 million independent voters in New York were actually able to vote, if Bernie Sanders maybe would have been the nominee.
Right.
And that's frustrating for a lot of people, especially after what's happened. So that's why that win, it's like a little bit bittersweet. But I agree with you, Laci, 100% that this is a time to celebrate. It's a time to relish everything that's been happening because these are our results, right?
Yeah.
As activist results. But
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like it's hard to celebrate something that also, I think, a little bit hasn't happened yet. Like, this is a promise. It's a promise to come together and find solutions for these big deal items. But it's not a solution in itself, which is also troublesome in that respect. Because it could get, if the election goes to Trump, then this win will feel much smaller in January. But if the election goes to Hillary, then this will feel like a step in the right direction, right? A step toward a more inclusive primary next time around, which is still 2020. I mean, 2020, that's a long time from now.
It feels long, but now time goes by so quickly.
Yeah.
Like, last year I'd feel, it's crazy.
Feel that.
Yeah, for sure. We also brought up earlier something that was, there was a lot going on over the weekend. Debbie Wasserman Schultz has stepped down as DNC chair, and this, because of the emails and the WikiLeaks issues and the fact that she appears in some of those emails, I mean, this is a pretty big deal. We've got an interim chair now, Donna Brazil, and which I think is kind of interesting. We've got, at this point, quite a few women at the top. If Hillary gets elected, then of the 5 top Democrats, the president, vice president, and the heads of each of members of Congress and the head of the DNC, there would be 3 women in the top, which would be pretty awesome, 3 of the 5. Which we're going to talk about a little more on Thursday. We're going to have a panel specifically about kind of women getting into this in party leadership. But I'm going to read a quick statement that Debbie Wasserman Schultz said. Going forward, the best way for me to accomplish those goals is step down as party chair. I know electing Hillary Clinton as our next president is critical for America's future. So it seems like she's still playing into the party, which is great. Right. But how do you feel like this is affecting people at the DNC? Like, everyone is talking about this. It's a huge deal, on the DNC's doorstep.
It's the bed they made.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, they messed up, and I don't know, I think it's about time she stepped down.
Yeah.
That's my feelings on it, and I think that's another victory to relish, because there was clearly some corrupt stuff that was going on, and that's not fair, and that's not democratic.
Yeah.
That's like the bottom line. It's not democratic. That's not how this system should be run.
Right. I think people already have a hard time trusting politicians, especially younger voters. We work really hard trying to just get them involved. And I think when stuff like this happens, it gives them an excuse to be like, you know what? This is exactly why I don't participate, because it doesn't matter who I vote for. It's rigged anyway. So unfortunately, that is really terrible. I think it's just bad for morale in general. But hopefully they don't let them get it down. And I think this is why we're really hoping that Bernie comes up with the speech of a lifetime tonight to really tell everyone that it's going to be okay. Because to be honest with you, like I said, if someone leaked emails from the RNC, I'm sure there would be problems too. So I know this is not good, but I'm also not, I don't think any part of me believes that only one side of this political agenda is biased. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's just the part that we happen to see this weekend.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, is that these were kind of leaked out there all at once, and people started diving into them. We kind of saw that happen during the primary process on the Republican side. People making comments that were very much like, no, I will never support this person, that people are like, I'm not going to support Trump, I'm not going to support Trump. And then slowly over time, in a Sisyphean effort almost, it seems like they pushed into where the Republicans now do have lined up in a lot of ways behind Trump.
Yeah, I feel like comparing the DNC and the RNC is just, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Because look at what their leaders say. Look at what their leaders do every single day in office. It's like, I wonder, does the GOP contingency even care if they're corrupt? I don't think so, because I think the evidence is glaring that there is already so much corruption. To me, it seems like that's a party that is complacent with it. Whereas with Democrats, we have different values as a party, and those are not our values, and that's why it's a much bigger deal, a much bigger explosion when things like that happen, because we don't stand for that. Whereas I feel like, I don't know what the hell's going on.
They would have gotten out of it somehow. I don't think anyone would have resigned if this happened.
No, but you feel that if that happened, because Reince Priebus, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, the chair of the Republican Party, he actually came out with a statement today saying that I would never be as careless with my emails as the Democrats were because I don't
Right.
talk about
That says
fellow
everything.
candidates like that, right?
Right.
But you honestly
email.
think that if this happened to Republicans, there would be no sense of outrage or accountability or anything?
I don't think that there would be nearly as much controversy. I mean, just look at what the leader of their party right now says openly without
True.
any backlash. I mean,
Good
I just
point.
feel like those sorts of things
Yeah.
don't matter as
I
much.
agree.
I mean, maybe there would be a little bit, but I feel like part of the reason why it is such a big deal is because it directly conflicts with the values of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I think you're right. They would somehow flip the switch on us, like when Melania plagiarized her speech. We spent our whole lives telling us that plagiarism is a terrible thing, especially as a journalist.
Yeah.
And then somehow they just get away with this and they make us feel crazy. Oh, no. It was a speechwriter. She was on the phone.
93% of her speech
Yeah.
didn't contain
Yeah.
It
anything.
doesn't count as
Yeah.
plagiarism. So yeah, I think if this happened at the RNC, like you said, he said, I would never be so careless with my emails. Not I would never do anything like
Yeah.
this.
Right, yeah.
It's very
Carefully
subtle.
worded.
It is
Yeah.
very subtle. Actually, that reminds me, like, there is this kind of no apologies in the Republican Party too, whereas the Democrats, that's also
Yeah.
not something they stand for. They're very much about that accountability, and so she stepping down right away. It came out, she was implicated. She wasn't she didn't deny it. She didn't play that game too much, and she just stepped down and said, you know what, I need to. This came out. Yes,
Yeah.
it still came out. It was still not great.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to her credit, I have to
She
say,
did step
she was
down.
like, I'm out.
It was too late, though.
It was
in
too
my
late. It was
opinion.
I agree.
absolutely too late.
I would have had more respect if she had stepped down when this started to become a topic of conversation.
Absolutely.
Not once it had totally boiled over.
Yes.
Because at this point, it's like the damage is done. I think she could have done a lot for the party by stepping down when this had started,
Yeah.
and not at this point. It's
Yeah.
a little, but better late than never, I guess.
I guess.
I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, and just kind of also, and this is more, I guess, a hypothetical, but it does seem also that on the Democratic side, people resign and apologize.
Yeah.
Whereas, I think Kim Davis is an excellent example as a public servant who refused to do her job as a public servant.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a Democrat would resign in protest, and of course, again, hypothetically speaking, and a Republican would not, would stay on principle.
Yeah.
So
It's definitely
whether-
something to think about. You
Right.
know, like how the different parties handle scandals.
it's like a difficult time
And-
for
and
their
controversy.
party. Yeah.
I find actually this conversation super interesting because I was out with a lot of Bernie supporters yesterday, and they feel the opposite. They feel that choosing somebody like Trump or choosing somebody like Hillary, it's two sides of the same coin.
Mhm.
They say whether, a lot of them, maybe they use the analogy that Lindsey Graham used when he was asked whether he would choose Ted Cruz or Donald Trump. He said, gee, it's like asking me, how will I kill myself? Will I use a gun or will I ingest poison, which is
Right.
the slower way, and that's Ted Cruz. And
Yeah.
a lot of them feel the same exact way because fundamentally the Democratic Party has let them down to the extent that it's involved with Wall Street, that it accepts lobbyists' money, to the extent that most of Hillary Clinton's financial donations come from banks. She's not trying to hide that. A lot of the super delegates are actually lobbyists other
Yeah.
than government officials.
Yeah.
So we see, even one of the activists that spoke yesterday, he said, you are giving me a false choice between fascism and neoliberalism. Neoliberalism meaning the philosophy that developed in the 90s of privatization, of privatizing schools, of privatizing everything, cutting out social welfare completely.
Right.
So they actually see the values of the Republican Party and Democratic Party. It's kind of like one is a little bit couched in nice words and morals and all of that, whereas the Republicans are, the Republicans.
Yeah.
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 What do you think of that?
I completely disagree with that sentiment, though. Like, I 1,000,000% disagree, because how can you look at the policies that Trump and Hillary are proposing and say that
they're
they're
two
the
sides?
same?
Yeah.
Like, that is just, I have a hard time wrapping my mind around it.
Yeah.
Like, particularly, Trump, he targets minority groups nonstop.
Yeah.
As a woman, one of the groups that he's targeted, I feel like very scared at the possibility of Trump being in office. There are real tangible outcomes that could come from that have implication for my life and half of this country, and that will not happen with Hillary. I'm not saying that Hillary's perfect or that there isn't corruption or that those concerns aren't valid. They are completely valid, but to say they're the same No.
Yeah.
That really misses the mark. And I think it's really women and people of color and immigrants and Muslims who are paying the price for that mentality.
Yeah.
I agree. And I completely agree with you, Laci. Honestly, it's been really difficult for Complex covering this election because it's not Obama running, right? It's Hillary and Trump. Our viewers don't love either of them the way they liked Bernie, for example. But I do feel the same whenever we make any comments that are pro-Democrats. People immediately are like, you're so biased. How can you vote for this woman who this and that? And I'm in my head, I'm like, guys, so I know like you made really good points, about the banks financing her, etc.
Yeah, that's fair.
But this is America. I get it. The money talks are always messy. When it comes to things like immigration and we're being racist and stuff like that, to me, that sets off a huge alarm. That to me is more important than any bank donating to to Hillary's campaign.
Yes.
Right.
And so I haven't been able to rectify that either. How we think that Trump is even remotely better than Hillary in this space. Like in this country that we live in now, as we're watching all this racial untension and all the shootings unfold, that we think Trump is a better option than Hillary. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
And not to mention, like, if you're looking further than the end of your nose, right? The Supreme Court nominees that are going to have to come up, like the
Oh my
changes
God.
in government
That's a
over the
whole
next
other-
4 years are going
Yeah.
to be pretty huge. And this election is going to determine a lot of the future of the United States, whether like long even after we could be gone.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
us, I mean, talking
Yeah,
right now.
I don't think we should still be arguing over pro-life and gay rights. To me, at this point, for our generation, we're young, we're mixed up, we're very
We're over
progressive.
that.
Yeah.
Those should just be a given. We shouldn't
lot
be
of that's
talking about
decided
that.
for us.
And Trump's VP is so anti-abortion that he tried to make women have funerals for their fetuses. If
Right.
we're not alarmed now, yes, this is an
I did not
actual.
know that.
Yeah,
That's
it's
a real,
it's
like,
that bad.
that's what I'm talking about. Like, that is terrifying.
Yep.
And that is what could be in store. So it's hard because you want to validate that frustration, that anger, right?
Right.
Of the people that you're talking about on Complex or wherever they may be in the world, in their politics. I think we need to create space for that anger to be like, yes, this is frustrating and it's wrong. We also need to look at the bigger picture. And that is like so crucial. And I think not just for this election, but for a lot of social justice
general,
issues
yeah.
and activism in general, sometimes you do have to look at the bigger picture and kind of compromise a little bit, and it sucks. But in this situation,
Democracy.
it does feel like life or death,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think I keep picturing it like railroad tracks. The further away you're looking, the more close they tend to be, And I think from a Bernie supporter's perspective, they're standing really far away from Hillary and Trump, who look like they're right next to each other. But the closer you get to it, the more you realize that there's actually a lot that separates the two of them. They both have valid opinions, they both have valid arguments, but they are in no way, none of these three people that we're talking about have like a big overlap.
Yeah,
in
terms of policy.
In terms
like
of their
maybe
policies.
in terms of some of like practices politically, but policy and how that affects us
Right.
directly. Two
Very,
different,
very different.
Yeah, two different things.
I feel like that's where the Bernie people in particular don't trust Hillary because even if I say, listen, she's supporting a $15 minimum wage, she even took on Bernie's college plan.
Yeah.
Right, to include families that I believe make below $275,000 a year, which is virtually everyone in America, to have free tuition-free higher education
Yeah.
in a state college, which is amazing. And that was a cornerstone of Bernie's agenda, and now it's become a cornerstone of Hillary's agenda. What they say is that if you look at Hillary Clinton's track record, if you look at her history in politics, and that's where it's really difficult for her because she's got 25 years in politics, and Trump has the benefit. It's a curse and it's a blessing that he doesn't really have anything to point to. It's not like, oh, I voted for
0
this
years
1 year
in
and then I
politics,
voted for
yeah.
something else the next.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
Hillary has a track record of that.
Yeah.
So before gay marriage was popular, she was against it. And then when the polls told her that it was okay, then she voted for it.
Obama
And
too, though.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Obama
Like
as
a
well.
lot of
People.
politicians.
And,
it was about poll numbers.
And that's why we are important. Our voices are important because we
Right.
can push. We can be the tipping point.
Exactly. But I feel like they look at a number of these issues, and even the minimum wage, it was for $12. And then $15 became popular, and then she was with Andrew Cuomo taking credit for that when that was
Right.
actually
Yeah.
there are just a number of these things that I can give you another 10 examples
Yeah.
that they point to and they say, well, Hillary Clinton's saying this today. What's she going to do when she's in office? Can we trust her? And that is going to be her biggest challenge.
Yeah.
Because, I believe it's over now 60% of the American people say she is not trustworthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she is
just
lucky
kills
because they
me.
say something similar about Donald Trump. But she is now has a higher untrustworthiness rating than Donald
Yeah,
Trump.
he's
That
got-
is
blows
a
my
problem.
mind.
He's got
That is a
one,
problem.
Oh my
one
God.
point on her or 3 points on
Yeah.
her or something, which is crazy. I was reading some Gallup polling this week for an episode of Secret Daily that's going to come out during the DNC, and kind of some preview on that. But strongly unfavorable. Hillary would be the worst candidate at this point in history if it weren't for Donald Trump being 20 points below her. Like,
I just don't
What does that say
understand.
about America?
Like, that's insane.
What
what
does
I'm-
it say?
that's insane.
What
What does that
it
say about us? Is
Right.
that what we believe we deserve? The two most disliked candidates in history? What does that say about
Yeah.
us?
I mean, I like what you say, what you're saying about, like, can we trust her? And I think that is where you and Laci are actually on the same page, is that, can we trust her? Yes, if our voices continue to be heard, we can. Because she does listen to her poll numbers. She does listen to the public. The public is the ones pushing her agenda toward the left. So if we continue to talk to each other and talk to the public, then the poll numbers will move and she will move with them.
Yeah.
You know, unlike the Republican candidate who will stay where he is going to stay today.
But doesn't
you know?
that worry you?
Yeah,
Like the lack
yes
of
and-
conviction in that? It's
Yes
not
and
like
no.
I believe X, Y, and Z, and because that is a principle, that is a moral, because it is, right, quote unquote. Like, I believe in a $15 minimum wage. That is what I believe. I believe in a woman's right to choose, and she does. She's amazing with women's right. But doesn't that worry you that it's like the minute the polls shift, then let me think about shifting with the polls?
I don't know if
Yes
she's
and no.
that.
No, but
If she's
That
flexible with her ideology. I mean, if you look at Hillary's voting ranking, there was all this stuff about how Hillary and Bernie were 92% voted
Yeah,
the same
similar,
in Congress.
yeah.
She is a liberal. She is a progressive. I think that there's two sides of the coin of what you're talking about, because isn't it also a politician's job to be a public servant, to listen to us? And so isn't it a good thing to have some flexibility, as long as you have some ideology that's guiding you, but to have some flexibility in policy to actually listen to your constituency? The flip side of that is, I think, a little bit more of an authoritarian view, but maybe a little bit more predictable as well when someone gets into office. I think there's got to be a healthy balance between the two, because someone who just has their head on something very specific when the public clearly wants something else is also problematic.
Yeah.
I agree.
yeah, I think a good case study in this is Obama. Kind of, we had huge numbers come out to vote him into office,
Yeah.
and then they all disappeared like moths during, after you turn the light off. It's just like everybody left and let him kind of say, oh, well, we voted him in because of these ideals and these things, and then we're just going to hands off and let him do his thing.
Right.
And then he went back toward the center. He moved back to where he naturally would have been had it not been for the public pushing him to where they wanted him to be, right? And this is obviously, I don't have data to support that, but it does feel like that might be the case. So I think you're both saying, again, the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're both saying, if we continue to talk, we're going to get the candidate that we want more so in one area than the other area,
Yeah.
right?
Hopefully. The other
Hopefully.
thing to keep in mind is that, we broadly represent millennials, which I hate that
hate that
word.
word.
But,
Right, yeah.
okay, that's how they talk about us, you
Yeah.
know. So they're, politicians are thinking about millennials. We are one faction of this country. We are not everyone.
The
And
one,
we are
yeah.
not monolithic either as a group.
Oh, absolutely.
And so politicians like Obama, they're also trying to listen to all of the other parts of America too. So it can be, I have some sympathy for politicians in the sense that there is to some degree, they can't ever win. Like, they need to
Yeah.
accept that people
No
are
one's
not
liked all the
always going to
time.
be, and maybe that's what people need to accept too, is that you're never going to have a perfect candidate because they represent 300 million
Yeah, it's
people.
impossible.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a lot of ideas, a lot of politics, a lot of life experiences. So maybe, doing the right thing and having something more ideologically stable is
Yeah.
that's a good argument for
I
it.
actually agree with you, because I also feel like the American public, most of them, based on just personal experience, don't have an understanding of how politics works and on how government works.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked for a politician in New York for about 2 years.
Cool.
And that's when I kind of I got it in a way, but I was privy to it because I was inside the process. And he was chair of the housing committee. And he was also a pioneer for poor people. So he built a number of affordable housing units in Brooklyn. And but there came a point where there was a bill, and then he said, okay, we're working with Republicans. Republicans will not pass this bill unless we give them X, Y, and Z, because that's what the developers want. But this is really important for us, so we're going to have to give them that.
Right.
And that's how politics works.
Right.
Yeah.
You give some, you win some, you lose some, you give and you get, and you have to compromise.
Absolutely.
And
And
which
for
are the most important
activists, a lot
battles?
of times, especially Bernie supporters I speak to, there is such a purist ideology at times that compromise is not a part of the dialogue.
Absolutely.
Right.
You make
know?
such a good point because you mentioned Obama, and you're totally right. People came out, they voted for him, he was in office, everyone abandoned him, and then later they're going to be like, well, he was a terrible president. He didn't do any of the things we wanted him to do. But like you guys said, I think if you work in an office, if you go to school, even with your family, you know that there's politics in any circle. And even on that small level, it's so frustrating. Like office politics makes us crazy. Imagine what it's like being the president of the United States. You know what I
And
mean?
he has office politics too, I bet.
Exactly. Politics in the office, politics with Putin. Like that's his, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like I don't think people understand just how tough it is. So even if a candidate fundamentally believes something in their heart is the right way, they can't always just do that. And I think you're right. I don't think I love Bernie. I don't think his supporters understand that. I just don't think it's the way politics works. He wants to do this, and he's a purist, and this is the right way to do it. That doesn't mean it's going to get done necessarily, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it's true, because I mean, what they're saying, at least, and I don't know if you guys have heard something similar, is that for most of them, I would say that it's about campaign finance reform. It's about no matter what we do now, until we overturn Citizens United and we actively move towards reforming the campaign financing system in America, everything is pretty much going to be the same. And you can have incremental change here and there, but until somebody can write a check and gain more influence and pass certain policies, then to what extent is this a true democracy? That's those are some, I don't know, what do you guys think? Those are some of the questions that were being asked that I frankly don't really have the answer to.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has a solid answer until...
I'm a Game of Thrones fan. I think there is no true democracy. Like we're kidding ourselves if we ever think that everything is going to be done the right way. It's just we keep pushing, and maybe eventually it gets better and better. We have come a long way from slaughtering each other, right, with swords. When we had disagreement,
sure.
so
Some
this is bad.
Sometimes,
That's a very positive attitude. Thank you.
We're getting better.
No, I agree. And you can even argue that we've come a long way since the 1990s,
Yes.
in terms of policies toward LGBTQ and womenens' rights. And we've moved the needle a lot. Not as much as we want.
Yeah.
I see your face, Laci. But we've moved it a lot since then, but not as much as we could.
I think we are moving forward slowly,
Very slowly.
very slowly, and that's why the Trump presidency is terrifying. It will undo all of those very slow things that we have worked for, and honestly, I have nightmares about it. It scares me.
Do you really have what do those nightmares look like?
After his RNC speech, I was like, oh my God, this is so scary. I just, I kind of get freaked out about what it would mean for the country, for my future children, all of the things that this would just set in motion. And I'm a very politically inclined person anyway, so maybe people will accuse me of caring too much, but I think this is stuff that affects us. It affects the entire world. It's scary to hear a speech that sounds like we're about to be run under a dictatorship, and he wants a police state, and he wants protesters arrested, and all of the things that are so essential to a democracy are just not values at all.
Well,
it freaks me out.
Hopefully we will not hear anything like that this week.
This week.
This week it's going to be a whole different ballgame.
I'm looking forward to those speeches.
Yeah, so
It's their chance.
I think we'll wrap it up. This was a really awesome discussion, so hopefully we can have some of you guys on throughout this week when we're going to be live streaming all week here at the RNC. So make sure that you come follow us. You can find us here on YouTube. You can subscribe to Seeker Daily. You can find us on Snapchat. You can find us on Instagram, on Twitter. We're all over the place. And you can, of course, find all of these awesome people as well. So make sure you do that. Thanks a lot for watching today. We'll see you next time.